Well, here we are, Thoughts from the Office, Redneck's Pride Outdoors. In the last 4 or 5 days, the folks calling in orders for our Coon Be Gone raccoon eviction paste is going crazy. And thank you. I want to thank everybody for their orders. I want to thank everybody that is calling me up and telling me they've been using it for 2 or 3 years and having great success. And I want to thank you, Donna, my wife, my son Jennings, and I want to just thank everybody for using our product. One thing you're going to notice this year about our product is its color has changed just a little bit, and the aggressive, nasty smell has dropped just a little bit also. We went back to our original formulation. Well, it's not the original formulation. We've just been, this year we've used a little bit of a cleaner base, if you will. So it's not causing it to be that dark color. And through my customers, I dropped the odor level down a notch, so we can actually go inside and it's not offensive on the inside of the the attic and what have you. So you'll notice that it's a little bit different color. It's a little lighter in color, but that's not stopping its effectiveness. Its effectiveness is just as good as it's always been. So don't be alarmed if it's a little bit cleaner smelling and not as dark in color. But a lot of folks have been questioning on the history of eviction, raccoon eviction. And like a lot of folks today, it's like Wild Man Mark said to me when I was talking to him a few weeks ago. He says, Jonesy, nobody knows about you. Nobody in the industry knows about you. Where you once was known all over, you're not known like that anymore. And part of that is because I'm not throwing myself out there like I used to back in the 90s and 2000s. So I've been around for a while. I started doing wildlife control in 1979. And like I've said to a lot of folks when we're talking about wildlife control, back in 1979, there was no cell phones, there was no computers, there was no written material. There was nothing. I remember getting a phone call from one of our division biologists, 85-ish, 1985, 84, something like that. And I remember Jerry saying to me, Yo, Jonesy, you want to do a bat job? And I said, sure, what do I got to do? And he goes, I have no blanking idea. I'll call you back tomorrow and let you know. Here's a number to call the folks if you want it. I said, okay. So I called the folks, talked to them. No freaking idea what I was going to do. Jerry called the next day and he goes, all right, here's what I've been able to gather. Go out for 3 nights. Count the bats leaving. He said on the 4th night, count the bats. You should have somewhat of the same number all the way through. Wait an hour after that. Go up and start sealing up the holes that you saw them leave. Yep. We'll just leave it at that, my friend. All right. That was in 1984, 85-ish, maybe 84, I guess it would be. So I'm giving you a little background on what we had to work with back in 79 to 85, 86. All right. So I'm going off into this video about the history, or well, I'll put it this way, my history on raccoon evictions. Because nobody knew anything about this stuff in the early 80s. And I can remember going back to 86, 87, 88-ish, somewhere in that time frame, up until about 89. Okay, but I started using eviction mindset about 86, 85-ish, 86, so somewhere. You know, I'm getting old. My memory's fogging. And the best I can remember getting the idea was from trapping raccoons. And back in the early 80s, 70s and the 80s, when we was trapping raccoons, we would spray our boots down with either fox urine as we was making our sets, or, you know, as I got into wildlife control, urine is an attractant. Folks, I see all these gimmicks out there that urine is a repellent. You want to scare rabbits from your yard, use fox urine. Urine is an attractant for 95%, except for one small portion. And that was sow raccoons with pups. And urine was a repellent or a eviction, but it had to be applied right. So in other words, just taking urine and throwing it all over the place didn't do diddly squat. Why? Well, because your raccoons smell urine every stinking night from raccoons. And as a trapper, I started to somehow realize that if I used raccoon urine, I could catch males, but I couldn't catch any females in my cage traps during the birthing period of the time, from say the end of March to June. And even after that, I couldn't use urine at all to catch the females that was in family units. Now, how I figured all that out and all that, I don't know. I just did. So I remember going on jobs and taking the urine, probably from desperation, probably from aggravation, because everybody knows that a raccoon sow with pups can be a pain in the butt to catch. All right. Plus the babies, the young ones in areas where they got to cut a hole and all this tomfoolery. Okay. So I learned to take some type of a holder. All right, scent holder, and I would put raccoon urine on it, and I would throw it down into the nesting area in the attic. And then I would take napkins or rags and wipe my armpits and wipe my body and put my human odor all over it, and take that and throw it down in the nesting area also. And what I found, that would make her move the raccoons. Now, the problem with that urine was this. Even though she would move her pups out of that nesting area, and probably 60% of the time she would vacate the house with them. Sometimes she would move them deeper into a house where I couldn't get to them. So I had to learn at that point to look for the areas that I think that she would possibly go, and also apply the urine and my human odor there. And then I would learn how to put my human odor on rags and what have you, and the urine at the entry point, along the travel route, in the nesting area, everywhere. It just literally go everywhere with the urine. And probably mid-90s-ish is when I started to learn and talk to other wildlife control people in the industry. By that time, our first NACOA meetings was being held in the mid-90s, I guess it was. Connecticut, I believe it was Connecticut, had some conferences going. The first NACOA meeting was the mid-90s, a little later than the mid-90s, but the first workshops was WCS, or WCT, Rob Erickson. And Connecticut was having some, I believe, at that time. There was a few other folks that was having some talks, and I was involved with a couple other national franchise things at that point, and go to the training seminars. And by the mid-90s, I started to realize that I wasn't the only guy that came up with that brainstorm of an idea using urine. They had the old saying, great minds think alike. So the rest of the folks that was in the industry was also using urine. And everybody also was having the same problems I was. Okay, you had to really apply it hard, or you took a chance on her keeping them in the house in a worse place than the original. Being a bait and lure manufacturer starting in 1987. I started working on an eviction product that I could apply or use that had a longer lasting, because urine would only last a few days, if that, depending on your lure holder and what have you. So we started using other mindsets, if you will. I started applying the bait and lure. I started applying the lure and bait manufacturing mindset to come up with a product for me. I didn't give a hoot about you guys. I cared about me. I was on to something here, and I wouldn't want to share that secret. We came up with some stuff that worked, and then we just had to apply it to a base that would make it last. We needed that longevity. I needed something that was going to last 30 days or more. And the reason I knew that was because after, by the mid-90s, we was starting to realize that these raccoons will take their pups out. But if she had her pups there in the first place, it was because she liked that place a lot, and that it was not uncommon that 10 days later she would start bringing them back if you didn't if the repairs wasn't done back in them days. And back in those days, we really wasn't into the repairs. We were still true blue wildlife control. Our job was to get rid of the critters, and their job was to repair their house. Or I would do a temporary repair or something like that, but it wasn't the mindset of today. And we would start to see where raccoons would start to bring their pups back after a 10-day period. Why? Because in the natural things, the hard facts of life for the raccoon, she realized or knew or however that boar was going in, or that other raccoon was going in, or whatever, was going into that structure to kill the pups. And if that den, and I personally believe that she chose that den because there was not any boar raccoon odors there. There was no negative. There was a good safety factor. So she chose that den. All right. And that in her animal brain, no reason power, I don't believe in reason, but I believe animals learn things, that after about a 10-day period, which would be what? If we think about it, in my terms anyway, a circuit period for a raccoon, a sow raccoon, was 5 to 8 days. So after about a 10-day period, her ability to think however they think, that was more than enough time to go back, investigate the den, and if everything was good and no more negative from me or the raccoon, she would start to bring her pups back. Because by that time the urine had dispelled considerably and there was no effect there. Even though she would smell the raccoon, the urine there, or that, there was no immediate threat, if you will. So that's why I went on the rampage to come up with a better product that was going to last with different things, and I started to find out what else repelled, what else the raccoon didn't like. Okay. And then that's when 95, 96, 97, I wrote the article for WCT talking about raccoon urine, and I caught heck from a lot of folks. Kirk LaPierre for one of them. Kirk reamed me out, man. Wow, he called me up, and I thought he was going to call me every name under the book, man. What are you doing? Why are you telling these guys this stuff? And I said, Kirk, you know as well as I do that that's old news, man. Why not give it? Anyway, that's when we came out with what we have today, almost, okay? From 2000 till about 10 years ago, we made our final adjustments to it, and that's what we have today, our Coon Be Gone that you buy today. All right, so that's the history for my end of the evictions. Now, I'm sure that as you talk to others across the other old goats, I'm sure there's some guys other than me. I was 1979. I'm not for certain when Paul got involved, but he was the early. I remember meeting Paul mid-80s, late 80s, and he had been in it for a while, I believe, at that point also. So you have Paul, he's been in it for a long time. And Buddy Al, he's been in it a long time. My buddy Al, I wish I could see Al again. old timers that aren't around anymore. Paul's an old timer, maybe a few others that I'm missing their names. Anyway, that's somewhat of the historical raccoon eviction from my end. Now, I left a lot of little stuff out because I don't want you to know about it. All right? But what I will say is this, is back in those days, in 79 till about 95, 90 easy, there wasn't anything in writing. All right? There wasn't anything in writing. And what we learned from was getting together, talking. Mike Page. Mike's another one of those has-beens. He came in 90, 91, 92, Mike did. Rich Daniotti around the same time. Dirk. He's been in it for a long time. 90s. You know, all them boys has been in it in the 90s. So, you know, even though to many of you today, the thought of raccoon eviction is a brand new concept, it's an old one. It's a really old one. And us old goats perfected it. I wish I could say we perfected it overnight, but the reality is that we perfected it over years of crap. Man, now what do I do type stuff. But in perfecting it, that's where I learned. And if you go, and I know Jose promotes my one podcast that I have. I had 2 or 3 other podcasts that was much better than that one. But they got lost in the talk shoe crash. The Rednecks Pride Outdoors talk shoe. I lost about 60 or 70 shows to the crash. We had a lot of good knowledge back in them days. But the point I'm trying to say to you is this. What I learned in eviction is you can't go halfway. On the easy ones, you can. On the easy ones, you can smear a little bit around the hole, and you'll get the results that you're looking for. But on the hard ones, you can't go halfway. You got to go 100% and all. You've got to make her aware of the eviction pace. You've got to make her aware of you. You have got to make her aware of the safety factor is now gone. And I got to get these pups out, because if you don't, she's going to move them deeper. And you hear me say all the time, there's a real fine line between a good wildlife control and a real good wildlife control specialist. And that fine line can't be seen. You can have both of those guys sitting at a table with you, and they're talking, and you will not see it in the conversation. You won't see it. There's a fine line between them. And the fine line is simply this. The good wildlife control person will do what they need to do. Will do what they need to do when they see they need to do it. But the real good wildlife control specialist will do what they need to do before they see they need to do it. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully this was a educational, informational, fun piece for you. Hearing from the old timers. I love hearing from the old timers before me. I always learned, and thought I'd just give a little bit of old timer information to you. Thoughts from the office, Rednecks Pride Outdoors. I'll talk to you later.